So hey guys, Simpsorama is the 6th episode of the 26th season, and it is technically the final episode of Futurama. Well, if you count it as canon. The episode was directed by Bob Anderson and it was written by J. Stewart Burns. So of course, this was the long-awaited Futurama Simpsons crossover episode. It showcases characters from Futurama, and I will be open and honest with you here, I am a massive Futurama fan. I love that show so much. The story follows Bender coming back in time to stop a mutated threat from the past. The threat being Bart. It's a wacky and weird crossover event, so let's get into the plot of this thing. After a funny couch gag with the hedonism Bart, the episode begins with Skinner announcing the time capsule to Bart's class. Nelson adds a picture of his dad, Milhouse adds a lucky rabbit's foot, and Bart adds a sandwich after blowing his nose into it. The time capsule is buried, and the hole made for the time capsule fills up with nuclear waste. But they bury it anyway and lump concrete over it. The rain and lightning comes down and the Simpsons wait indoors away from the bad weather. As they watch TV, Bender comes from the sky. So this is the inciting incident. I get the argument it is when the time capsule is buried or when Bart puts the sandwich in, but the main place where the conflict comes from is the Futurama characters. Homer or Bart wouldn't know about the time capsule being a problem if Bender didn't come back in time, so I'm counting Bender arriving as the inciting incident. The Simpsons family go to bed, but in bed Homer hears something in the basement. Homer and Bart try to get Santa's little helper to go down, but he doesn't want to go, so Homer uses Bart as bait. Bender goes to drink Homer's beers and Homer beats him, but eventually Homer and Bender bond over hitting Bart. This is our plot point too, and it shifts us into our first half of the second act. Homer and Bender eventually become friends and they go to Moe's, and then the Bowl-O-Rama. At home, Lisa doubts Bender is from the future and thinks he is just an advanced and modern robot. But Bender tries to prove this with his mouth announcement, but she brings him to Professor Frink to double check. Frink analyzes Bender and asks his mission, but Bender doesn't remember, so Frink resets his mission protocol. Bender then remembers that he has come to kill Homer Simpson. This is our midpoint, or no return point, as it ups the stakes and returns us to the conflict of the time capsule. Bender goes to kill Homer, but he isn't able to because of the friendship that he has formed with him. Leela projects out of Bender's ass and reveals the mutant rabbits from the future that are destroying the Earth. This is an important pinch point in the story, but I wish they revealed this a little sooner, mainly as I think this is the main conflict, but I understand with the whole time travel thing, it would have been hard for them to reveal it. And plus you want that friendship between Homer and Bender. Leela demands Bender kills Homer, and eventually she transports there with Fry and the Professor, where Bender stops her. Professor Farnsworth and Frink decide to work together with Lisa to figure out who the other ancestor of the mutant rabbits is, and whilst they do that, Leela, Fry, Bender and Homer return to the Simpsons house. Eventually, after some little jokes, Farnsworth and Frink run home to tell the Simpsons that the other person is, of course, Marge. Another projection happens from the future where we see that the mutant rabbits are in fact the result of Bart. They whittle it down and figure out that it has something to do with the time capsule and they rush to dig it up. They do this little flashback scene and I'm kind of mixed on it really. It's but I get why they needed to show the mutant obviously mutating and obviously explain it to the audience who may not entirely get it or have missed the rabbit foot being thrown into the time capsule. Bender uses his laser eye thing that I'm pretty sure he never had in Futurama, but hey ho, and they dig it up. But as they do that, they get another video from the future where Amy tells the group that the mutants are attacking the time capsule and Scruffy kills himself. And the Simpsons, Fry, Leela and the Professor get sucked back into the future. But Bender is stuck in the present with Maggie. This is our plot point too, and it shifts us into the third and final act. I gotta say, I like the concept of this scene overall. We've seen the Futurama characters in the Simpsons world, so let's bring the Simpsons to Futurama's world. But it is kind of done conveniently, like it's very convenient. And I don't get why Bender doesn't just dig up the mutant rabbits there and then. The characters in the future try to come up with a plan to stop the mutant rabbits, whilst Homer helps fix the time machine somehow. I didn't really get this part. Bender bets on horses and kills some to win, he bonds with Maggie, and this pair is actually really funny, I like it a lot. Lisa lures in the Bart mutants to the Madison Cube Garden. The Planet Express gang then launch the building into space and save the Earth. This is of course our climax scene, and I'm honestly mixed on it. I mean, for a starter, I thought these things are around the world, or at least I got the sense of that, so it doesn't make sense that they'd all be there. It feels kind of lazy, and a very lazy way to solve the issue, and it seems way too simple for the intelligence of Futurama, and even the Simpsons. Anyway, the Simpsons go back home, Bender splits the betting money with Maggie, and he shuts himself down to awake in the future. The episode ends with Homer dragging him to the basement, but giving him a beer. A nice way of connecting the scene where they first met, and a great resolution for the episode. I kind of see this as a meta scene overall, like the Simpsons is saying goodbye to Futurama, but I'll always remember it for what it was, and in some ways it will always be a part of it. We get one last scene of the mutants going to Omicron Persei 8, and Lur and his wife meet Kang and Kodos, who are both revealed to be female. Nice. So overall, what do I think of this plot? Well, it's simple and honestly a little safe. I don't think the plot is necessarily terrible or bad, I just think they took barely any risks with it. I also have a big issue with the whole time travel thing, and it comes down to skin colour. We've seen the past in Futurama through Fry, and all the Caucasian characters are depicted as well Caucasian, but in the crossover, of course, all the Caucasian characters are yellow. If we look at The Simpsons, we know this to be true. Now, obviously, Futurama has been depicted as fiction in the Simpsons universe, and vice versa. But I don't know, I think the fact of that is kind of not getting me on board with the whole time travel thing. I honestly think it would have made more sense if they'd done some sort of interdimensional storyline instead. Maybe the Simpsons universe is another dimension, or maybe it's Futurama that's the other dimension. Maybe there's a whole debate of who is the fiction and who is the fact. I think I'm taking this a bit too seriously, but it is kind of confusing. For such a simple story, it makes absolutely no sense. They obviously were pretty fast and loose with their time travel logic. We know that they have travelled in time in Futurama, but it's always layered with, strict rules. As said before, I don't think the plot is bad, it's just meh. It's lacking the jazz I expect from Futurama. You can really tell the Simpsons writers were involved with this one. Maybe we should look at the jokes of this thing. There is some good humour here. I really like the stuff with Professor Farnsworth and him telling Marge that we just have to kill all your children. That one was a really good joke. I personally like the freemium game joke too. It hits home, and it's funny especially considering both these properties have freemium mobile games. Bender putting money in the cash register at Moe's and his fling with the jukebox are also very good jokes. I like the Scruffy joke too. Life isn't worth living without a mustache. I'm not a huge fan of the Seymour Asses callback. It feels kind of lazy to me, and it also makes no sense because Panucci Pizza is not in Springfield, unless Springfield is in New York. Hey, maybe that concludes it. That last scene with Kang and Kodos on Omicron Persei 8 was a really funny one too. The Marge and Leela joke was also very good. I mixed on the meta joke about Bender and Homer looking similar, but I can appreciate the self-awareness. I just think those fourth wall jokes kind of break the flow sometimes if they're not done right, and this one was I do think for the most part the jokes in this one are pretty damn solid. It got a few laughs out of me, and I barely had any moments where I rolled my eyes, or I just didn't get the joke. So let's move on and see if Simpsorama did the characters of Futurama and The Simpsons justice. The obvious protagonist of this one is Homer. Wait, no, Bender. Wait, no, Lisa. Wait, no, Bart. Okay, if I really had to decide, Homer seems the obvious choice, but he is not that active in the third act. We don't actually see him fix the time machine. I think Homer is depicted fine in this episode, but his character is really just there to bond with Bender and introduce that conflict. Bender is depicted with powers he does not have in Futurama, or at least I'm pretty sure. The laser eye and the tongue are just weird and unneeded. I don't get why Bender forgets his mission either. Maybe it's the fact he falls out the sky and bumps his head, but it was convenient. I think the scene where Bender decides not to kill Homer could have worked still. Maybe Bender approaches Homer wanting to kill him, but he falls in friendship every opportunity he gets. I don't know, I just think the amnesia story technique is really lame and very lazy. Lisa is portrayed exactly how I expect her to be portrayed, bar 2. I have to give a big shout out to Professor Frink and Professor Farnsworth. They make quite a duo. I think both meta-science are funny and portrayed as very smart like they are in their respected shows. They make a good duo, and honestly I wish we saw more of them, but they do heavily take up the story. It seems really weird because Professor Frink is normally not present in normal Simpsons stories. The only characters I was disappointed on were what they did with Leela and Fry. They barely do anything. But Fry especially. I'd argue Scruffy has more involvement in the story than him. I mean, it's weird considering that Fry is the main character of Futurama, at least if you look at the pilot, and he has no involvement with the crossover event. Leela has some involvement, but again, not much. At least more than Fry though. Anyway, I think I've looked at all the key players. I don't think any of the characters get any sort of amazingly new perspective or anything, but certainly there isn't any disservice to the characters going on. So let's now move on to the score. Simpsorama is overall a good episode, but it could have been better. I like the idea of playing on the fact that The Simpsons and Futurama are both fiction in their respected universes, and it could have been really cool to see some interdimensional travelling. Maybe we could get the future Simpsons involved. I think this crossover is great on the humour side of things, but I really wish they included Fry and Leela a little more, and Farnsworth kind of stole the spotlight a little bit. Not that I didn't like it, I thought he was really good. Overall, the plot is okay, but also very simple. Anyway, Simpsorama is a solid 5 out of 10. But don't worry, it's closer to a 6 than a 4. Now, let's move on to the wheel. So, here's the wheel. It's a good wheel. Let's click it. Bam. So, the next episode we will be reviewing is... Oh. Bart to the Future! We're doing another Future episode! Sure thing!